Sois belle and tais-toi, which in French means be beautiful and shut up. Because it was, you know, the women in the 50s and 60s were to be beautiful and shut up.
I loved your work in Conclave, and I'm excited to see your next film.
I might play a bug or something. I may not play a human, play an
Well,
animal.
I would love that. I would love to see you play a bug. I think if I were to be any bug, I would like to be a ladybug.
I don't know how they mate.
I'll find out and then I'll tell you.
In America, most of the time you have your lines, you have to know them. How do you memorize your lines?
I call my mom.
Yeah.
She'll just read the lines with me, and as much as I can, try to not look at the paper. And then my mom is always like, can I just say one thing? And I'm like, Mom?
So I'm Isabella Rossellini, and who are you?
I'm Mikey Madison, but we have met before.
Yes. And anyway, even if I hadn't met you, I know you because I've seen your beautiful films and you're working.
Oh gosh, well, I definitely know you and your work. I have already said this to you, but I am such a huge fan and really admire your work. Just your body of work as a whole is, it's really incredible. I was looking through your IMDb this morning, looking at all of these iconic films that you've been a part of. And
thank you. I never think of my career as a grand thing, but it's been very interesting. I mean, I like it. It was interesting to work with so many different great talents, and some films became, with time, acquired a reputation, including Blue Velvet. It maybe is the most famous film that I've done. When it came out, it was not successful at all.
Really?
It was very, very controversial. It took years to be recognized. Death Becomes Her, another film that now has gotten his reputation, but at the time it was well received, but not a big deal. But
it's so interesting.
Yeah.
Because I mean, Death Becomes Her is a film that my mother showed me, I think right when I was starting to become interested in acting.
And when did you know that you were interested in acting? How did it happen?
I think I was maybe about 14 or almost 15 when there was something that sort of struck inside me that made me really like yearn for what these people were doing on screen, or how to become a part of that in some way. And it just...
Because your family is not in films. It was like something that you decided yourself, because I come from a family of filmmakers.
Right, yes, of course, your mother. And yeah, my parents are psychologists.
Yeah.
And I come from a family of psychologists, of doctors, and I was horseback riding. My mother was also a horseback rider, and my grandmother as well. So up until I became interested in film, I was like, well, I guess I'll just be a professional horseback rider.
Oh, really?
Or maybe a horse trainer. And so I think that I've always been curious about people and psychology.
Exactly. I think a lot of acting is psychology. Sometimes I think if I hadn't been an actress, I would imagine that a lot of actors would be psychologists or would be in that world somehow. Because we do portraits of people's emotions, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you have to kind of imagine them, and we all have them in us. How do you work? When you have to do a character, is more intuitive, or you do a lot of research, you rehearse, you work with a coach? How do you work?
I think it's been different every time. Every job I've had, I learned something from that, something big, something that changes my process or makes me want to go deeper in terms of research. But for Anora, it was a character unlike anything I've ever done before. There was so much about her that was so different from me. Her physicality, her emotionality, where she's from, how she speaks. She speaks a Russian, a language that I don't speak, and so I knew I had to go deeper in terms of my research, my preparation than I had before.
And she's very exuberant, and I was surprised when I met you first that you're so calm. Because I imagined that you were like your character, that at least that exuberance that she had was part of your personality. Instead, you found it in you.
It was something that I was constantly reaching for, and exerting a lot of energy to capture. She's someone who isn't like how I am right now, searching for my words, or she's not as, I think, thoughtful in terms of the way she walks through the world.
You know, Jimmy, the girls and I have been talking, and if your cousin doesn't start showing us some respect, we're not gonna tip out anymore.
All right, I'll talk to him.
Who are you talking about, the DJ?
All right, seriously?
He's an asshole.
I shared my playlist with him, and he was very rude and dismissive.
You're killing me. Let's go, come on.
No, not I'm eating my food.
The film is very comical. I laughed a lot. I mean, it's also heartbreaking, but I found it also, I don't know, so pleasantly, endearingly, but comical too. And you're furious when they come in to interrupt your wedding. I thought it was so. I mean, you were angry, but it made me also smile at the situation. Did you know it was going to be comical, or am I the only one that says it? No, but I'm sure a lot of people did. And the film was light. It tells a very dramatic story. But
Our director is wonderful at finding humor in dark moments. And he has a very specific sense of humor that I've always loved and recognized in his previous work. And so to me, the script was always funny. But obviously the character that I'm playing none of this is funny to her. Her life is being, of course, ripped away from her. And so for me, it was so hard because I'm working with these wonderful comedic actors who are so different in so many different ways. And I was there having so much fun, but my character isn't, and so is that separation of these two things.
Yes, exactly. But in the fight, I thought you must have left them with a lot of black and blues, because the fight was really, it didn't seem choreographed. I mean, some of it might have been 1, 2, 3 punch with a stunt person, but you were fierce. Did you leave them?
I was left with a lot of bruises. A lot of my legs were like covered in black and blue splotches. But, you know, for me, any kind of discomfort, it's so temporary, you know, and the film, it's going to be forever. And so I obviously felt safe all the time, but I was like, she's fighting for her life, she's fighting for her marriage, so I'm going to throw myself into these scenes, and how fun that I get to do all of my own stunts and sort of like let her animalistic insides come out like that. But you play a woman in your film, Conclave, that's quite stoic. And
yes, she's very, it's all inside. So it was like being a silent movie star. You know,
very controlled.
Because you had to, I think I had to express a lot of emotions, but in some, because the Catholic Church is very hierarchical and is a patriarchy, so it's a patriarchal society. Yeah. The men vote for the Pope is a man, the cardinal vote for the Pope, they are only men, the women cannot even do mass. But I went to Catholic school because I was born in Rome. And so I went to Catholic school, and not because my family was particularly religious, but they send you to Catholic school because they think that the nuns, they have time, and so they're more dedicated. That's really the logic. And they were very dedicated, but they were very, you know, it was an interesting thing. My mom was Ingrid Bergman, was an actress. Yes. And my mom always talked about the fact that she didn't choose acting, acting chose her, that she had to act. She had 4 children, you know, it was very difficult for her to be a mother and have this big career, and a lot of people say, why don't you stop, take care of your children, and maybe later on. She couldn't, she had to act. It was really a calling. And when I asked my nun at school, how did her family reacted when she decided to be a nun? She said it was terrible. They all cried. They were desperate. They say, why don't you go to church every day? But we want to have grandchildren. Can't you just marry and go to church every day? What's the difference? She said, I couldn't. I had to be a nun. It was a calling. She used exactly my mom's word. And both my mom and the nuns were very strong, independent women that made the choice they wanted to live. And a lot of other women that I've met, or mothers, they hadn't really lived the life they wanted to live. They lived their life because they were dedicated to their husband or the children, but they hadn't fully lived their life the way my mother did and the nuns did. So that was my inspiration, these very strong women.
Well, good afternoon, sister. I would like to speak to the nun who dropped her tray just now.
She's safe with me. I'm dealing with the situation
I'm
here.
sure you are, Sister Agnes, but I must see her myself.
I hardly think a dropped tray should concern the Dean of the College of Cardinals.
Even so,
The welfare of the sister is my responsibility.
And this conclave is mine.
When you were preparing this character for Conclave, were you thinking about that?
I was thinking about them. Thinking about them, and it didn't take me long to find her.
Really?
No, it was pretty, very stoic, everything inside. But also, she's not in the brawl because all these men that discuss like politics,
Right.
the right, the left, the more conservative, the more liberal. Some have committed violation of their vow. They're humans, so that happens. And but she's out of the brawl, and so she can judge better. So she has a power. And I always felt that maybe the cardinal was, if anything, were a little bit intimidated of her. They were very respectful. When I denounce one of the cardinal, nobody says, "What are you talking about?" Nobody. Everybody completely accepts. Once I speak, I speak.
And what was it like filming that scene? What did you feel?
Well, I felt very nervous because I never spoke in the film, and there were all these big actors, John Lithgow, Ray Fiennes, Stanley Tucci, and everybody was a man, and they were all of them, and I had to call them, we were all talking, the scene I called their attention, and they finally pay attention to me, and then I denounced one of them. And I was nervous because it was the first time that I was speaking, and so my heart was beating very fast, but I thought, well, she must have felt the same. Yes. So I didn't have to fight against my emotion as Isabella and be Sister Agnes. I think she probably feels very nervous because she had this wonderful line, I know my role is to be invisible, and she's always serving, and she's very careful, but and God nevertheless has given me eyes and ears. So that's a fantastic line.
It's so powerful.
It's the line that is powerful. I just had to say it.
It's not just the line, it's your performance. Because it really is such a breathtaking, powerful scene and moment in the film. There's so much power to what your character says and how it affects everybody else in that room.
And everybody else. And she has great authority.
Although we sisters are supposed to be invisible, God has nevertheless given us eyes and ears. I know what prompted the dean of the college to enter the Holy Father's rooms. He was concerned that the sister from my order that made that regrettable scene might have been brought to Rome with the deliberate intention of embarrassing a member of this conclave. His suspicions were correct. She was indeed here at the specific request of Cardinal Tremblay.
But you were talking about before about feeling safe on the set. I think that it's essential, isn't it, to feel safe, especially when there are nudity scenes or scenes where there's outside the conventional, that you can have some criticism or some comment. I did Blue Velvet, and I had a nudity scene, and my nuns made a mass for me. They prayed. I was so sorry to have hurt their feelings. I feel so bad because they thought, what possessed her? We made everything what we did. She didn't get from our teaching. And then Blue Velvet acquired a reputation as an art film, so I was redeemed. But also I remember doing Blue Velvet, how safe I felt on the set and how I could really speak to David Lynch, the director, and say, this makes me embarrassed. And then you can experiment. You could throw yourself. You could try this. You could try that. And you say, does it work? No, that. And you can find it. Was it the same for you? Trying different things and feeling that you can experiment, because you have total understanding of what the director wants.
Yes. Well, first of all, I'm so happy that that was the experience you had on that film. Also, because it's a character your character is so vulnerable. Like, you're not just nude on the outside, the inside too. And so to feel that safeness and protection from your director, I think that's it's the most important thing to have to be able to trust your director. And
Trust the director and also the other actors and everybody, because, you know, the director is like the orchestra director. He really gives the tone to the set, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And I really felt that with my director, Sean. We created a friendship that, to me, was able to create the base for the energy that we brought onto set. And I knew that he would always be there to protect me, to guide me in the right direction. And so because I knew that, I felt free to try things. I felt free to play this character who's a sex worker and is so physically exposed and emotionally exposed at times. And also, I mean, the wonderful actors that we had in our film.
Wonderful.
Some of the kindest, most generous.
But they are Russian, or they are American Russian, or they are Russian.
So two of the actors, Yura, who plays Igor, the bald man, who's so wonderful in the film, and Mark, who plays Ivan.
Yeah.
They're both Russian, from Russia. Yeah. The two other actors, Vache and Karin, are Armenian. Yes.
Armenian?
Yes.
Amazing.
But most, what I've learned is that in Armenian culture, it's quite common to also know Russian.
Right, right. It's, and like in our capitalistic world, English is the main language. If you go to Italy or France, people speak English mostly.
How many languages do you speak?
I speak 3 languages well, and 4 in Spanish. I never acted in Spanish, but I act even in the theater, in Italian, French, and Italian.
Oh. Would you ever want to do a film in Spanish?
Well, you know, I wish to do a film in Spanish just because then I would master the language. You know, Italian and Spanish are very similar. So if you don't immerse yourself into a language, you don't really learn it. So if I would do a film in Spanish, of course, I would have to just speak Spanish, take lessons in Spanish, and finally come out of it speaking Spanish. But I mean, it's kind of limbo where I understand everything. I can read a book, I can read the news, I can read what people talk, and then make myself understood. So I will always speak it badly.
But you can read it.
I can read it. Yeah, I can read it.
Wow, that's very impressive.
But Europeans, you know, my mom spoke 7 languages. European, they all speak many languages because it's like if every state had a different language, so it's so small countries.
My grandmother is the same. She spoke maybe about 10 languages.
Right.
And
Where is she? Where was she from?
She's from Lithuania.
Yes, very much.
Yes.
Especially when you are in a smaller country, she speaks Russian and Lithuanian.
She did, yes,
Yeah, I read that.
Yeah, unfortunately, it wasn't quite passed down to my father or me. But in the film, I'm lucky. I've never done a film where I have to speak a different language. And so it was interesting to try to learn as much as possible and to really understand what...
It probably the sounds are probably familiar, because when you have to make say speak Chinese and you're not familiar with the language, it's really difficult. But if you have heard them from your grandmother, or if she had an accent, that is, that's easier, isn't it? Did it help?
Well, my grandmother's accent was unlike any accent I've ever heard from anybody else. And so I can't say that it's a Russian or any kind of European language. It's lots of things mixed together, very unique. The character that I play is supposed to be, she's not supposed to speak Russian perfectly, because she's always going to be an outsider in whatever situation she's in. And so for me, it was a little bit of a blessing because I don't speak Russian and I have an American accent.
I can speak Russian, I just prefer not to, but you can go ahead and speak Russian. I'll understand.
I don't understand. What the fuck?
Okay.
Yeah.
Привет, Иван. Меня зовут Annie.
It was easier for me to go into this not having to think, okay, I'm going to have to perfect all of these different sounds that Russian people make. I definitely knew that I needed to speak it in a very specific way. So.
The last scene, which is so touching in the film, that must have been very difficult to make, isn't it? To break down like that. How did you get there?
It was difficult.
Very difficult.
I was very nervous about that scene.
I would imagine,
Because I certainly put a lot of pressure on myself for that scene because I wanted it to... I loved the character.
Yeah.
And that's a moment where she is finally able to release this pain that she's been holding on to, all of this anger, frustration, holding the weight of all of the ways that these horrible ways people have treated her just because of what she does for a living and who she is. It's so unfair, and I wanted to do her justice. And so I think I put a lot of pressure on myself to get it right or perform in a certain way, and I had to just let all of that go and just be honest to that moment and where I was emotionally. And so we tried to film it many times, and something would always happen. Like the snow didn't look real, or the windshield wipers were doing something, and it was so frustrating.
Yeah, so frustrating.
And I got to a point where I was like, I think I just need to step out of the car and center myself in some way. And I was like, how do I open myself up more and release that vulnerable part, because I'm playing this character who's constantly covering. I found myself feeling similar to her in some ways. Like I was in my life is Michaela. I'm a very emotional person. I'm very outward with my emotions, and she isn't. And I found myself in the same emotional state that she was in. And so it was like, I think I need to unlock some personal memory from my life as Michaela to try to get to this emotional state that she should be in, to release that emotion. And so there's this old voicemail I have that my dad sent me from years ago, and I don't listen to it often, but I do have it saved. And I was like, well, maybe I should listen to that. And so Sean, our director, was sitting in the back seat, and yours obviously in the front seat. I'm sitting there, and before we did the scene, we just played it, and we all listened to it. And
It'd break you down.
it did, but it was not just, it was listening to my dad's voice.
Yeah.
And then it was also sitting in a car with other people listening to it too, which is so vulnerable, because this is like my secret voicemail that, you know, it's a lot to expose that. And I think it was perfect for all of us, because it kind of it grounded all of us in a certain place. Like the director who is telling the story, it created this like intimacy between all three of us, and you and I as well. And so I think that's how I was able to get there. Yeah.
You know, when I saw the film, there's a film that was done many, many years ago, Cabiria, from Federico Fellini, and there was a sex worker played by the great...
that film.
Yeah, I was wondering if you had seen it, because she played, Giulietta Masina plays this character like you, so endearing, and yet she's a prostitute, and yet your heart goes to her, because she's a dreamer.
Yes.
Yeah, like you are in the film. So you've seen the film.
I have, and it was actually a reference that Sean sent to me before we shot, and so I've seen the film, and it's one of his favorite films. Gosh, what a beautiful film that is!
Yeah.
And that last scene, it's so heartbreaking, isn't it?
So heartbreaking, yeah, yeah. Well, like in Anora, the last film. The last scene is very powerful.
Oh, thank you. I would love to talk to you about some of your favorite films you've done, or if there's...
Well, I think I mean, when I choose a film, it's not sometimes the script, because sometimes I don't understand the story. Because I sometimes work with artists or directors that are very avant-garde, like if you work with David Lynch, it's not that he doesn't know how to do narrative. He's like an abstract painter.
Yeah.
He wants to say something that is mysterious. He said to me once, you know, but when you see life, you enter into a room, and there's other people, and you immediately know if you have to behave yourself or if you can be relaxed. That's what he's interested. He's interested in the moods and the atmosphere, even if you don't really know the narrative. Why is that room has that tension or that relaxation? I think it's the directors or working with other actors. Of course, in Conclave, the director was fabulous, Edward Berger, and Stanley Tucci, Ray Fiennes, working at this caliber of actor. And they make it easier. I have to say that when you work with very good actors, you almost have to react to what they say. The job becomes much easier. It's not more difficult, it's easier. It's more difficult when you work with somebody. My father worked with a lot of non-actors. His style of film, that's what Federico Fellini did. Cabiria was younger than my father. Actually, my father was his mentor. So he worked with my dad. And my dad worked with a lot of actors and non-actors. He would mix them. And a lot of the actors was a little different because we learned the dialogue because of the script. But if you work with a non-actor, he's unable to learn the lines, and so he might change them. And then the actor is obliged to react and improvise. So it requires a different skill. And I always found that to be kind of a fascinating. So, I mean, in America, most of the time you have your lines, you have to know them. And the better you know them, the easier it is to say it. How do you memorize your line? Do you work? I tape the answer of the others and then listen because I don't want to read. I want to hear. Oh. So that I'm always forced to be alert. So you'll record
I
record not my lines. I record the other actor's line and I answer to that. And then sometimes I work with the coach, not so much for the coach to tell me what to do, but to force me to listen. And if the coach is good, she will deliver it slightly different so that you have to change your reactions. Right. And then it becomes an exercise that frees you to be alert on the set.
Oh, that's interesting. You know, there's a scene in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood where Leonardo DiCaprio's character is rehearsing lines, and he had recorded it on a cassette player or something, and he's reading the other character's lines, and then he's...
Yeah. Right, I remember that fabulous scene. No cuts. It's amazing.
And that's how you do
Yes,
your
that's
lines.
how I do it, yeah. And how do you do it?
Oh, well, I call my mom, and I'll send my mom the pages, and she just helps me memorize them. And I've just been doing it like that for, I guess, 10 years now.
But because she plays the other characters and you answer to her,
She'll just read the lines with me, and I'll, as much as I can, try to not look at the paper, and I just memorize the lines.
It's better not to look at the paper,
And then my mom is always like, can I just say one thing? And I'm like, Mom, I'm not memorizing it like in a specific way. I'm just memorizing the lines. She's like, oh, okay. I just have a couple thoughts about this and that. But that's how I do it, and and it's nice too because then my mom kind of knows the story that the character that I'm playing.
They must be delighted to be part of your career and how about this enormous success that you're having? I find it very difficult. The red carpets terrify me. They terrify
It's quite
you.
nerve-wracking, isn't it? Yes.
It's easier to be on a film or easier to be on stage. I mean, I just finished a 32-city tour of a monologue that I've written, and I tell you, it was less frightening to be on stage every night in French, which is not my language, the monologue. I've done it in 3 languages, but the last group of cities I've done was in French. And the red carpet is very frightening.
Right, yeah.
The scrutiny of the people.
I don't know if it's ever something that I'll get used to, but I'm okay with that because for me, if it means that more people will see the beautiful film that I made, I'm so happy to be somewhere to celebrate it and to celebrate film. To me, that's something that's exciting to me. I've never done any stage work before. I've only just done film and television, and you said you wrote a monologue.
Yes, I haven't done much theater, but I've done it recently, partially because as you get older, or maybe in my generation, I also work as a model. But when you work as a model and as an actress, for my generation, there wasn't really much room for, after a certain age, about 45, 50, kind of the work diminish. So I started writing and did my monologue and did it in the theater. Always about animals, because I went back to the university and got my master in ethology, which is the science of animal behavior. It's actually a science that belongs to psychology.
That's amazing.
Yeah, this is well, the psychology
interesting.
department. And so then I start doing that. But yeah, I've done some theater, but not much, partially because also I had children, and the theater forces you to travel already with acting and the film festival and the promotion. There is a lot of traveling. But if you do theater, there is even more, and very long absence.
Right.
So I picked it up once my children were older.
How many children do you have?
I have 2 children. I have 2 children, 3 grandchildren.
Oh, wow. That's wonderful.
It's hard to, maybe it's not only in our job, but in every other career. It's very difficult to combine family, children, and work. That is hard.
I imagine that it is.
School closes at 3. Nobody ever thought that mothers were going to work and have a career. When you work in films, who knows what time you finish working? But even if you work in an office, it's never 3 or, So I'm always amazed that if I go to lunch with you, I can use, and it's business. It's a tax deduction. I can put it as a business lunch. But my babysitter that I needed is not that I cannot tax deduct my babysitter. So I never understood that logic. But anyway,
that's true. No, it's absolutely true.
Yeah, it's tough. So I didn't do theater, partially because of that. Modeling also required traveling, but it was always 2 or 3 days, and then I can come back. But tour, a theatrical tour, gone for 6 months. Can't do that. No.
The sacrifices that a mother makes.
And with children, it's not only the mother makes a sacrifice, but it's the children that are left home, and they might have a big exam, or they might have a soccer game that they want the parents to get, and you can't go. So that is, I always think that has to be improved. I don't know how, but at least we work. I mean, my generation worked. The generation before, my mom was the only woman in the family that worked.
Oh, really?
They only went to work if there was a war and the husband were in prison or something. Women felt like, okay, we have to work, but otherwise they didn't work, you know. My mom had this colleague, like everybody was saying, poor thing, she loves acting. Like it was a kind of a malaise she had to live with.
I find that's, if I read a script and I feel, I have to do this, I have to be the one that plays this role, that's an indication that I need to do it. And so I can relate to what your mother's saying, is that you just have to do something. And I think that's how you're able to put all of yourself into it. And I mean, acting, it's an emotional job also, like you said. And so to feel that pull and that draw towards something so strongly, to be able to give all yourself to
Would you
that.
ever consider, I mean, my mom always wanted to work, and then she worked less when she grew older, but she never really bought a book and produced, and a lot of actors and actresses now buy their material, develop their material, something that my mother could have done, but it never even occurred to her they could have done, just because she was a woman. Would you like to produce or buy options of books, articles, create material for yourself as an actress?
I would like to. I love filmmaking as a whole. That, to me, is where my biggest passion is. And so right now, acting in conjunction with filmmaking is
like
where
directing,
my heart is.
It was it was a French actress called Delphine Seyrig who did a film called Sois belle et tais-toi, which in French means be beautiful and shut up. And she interviewed...
What a great title.
Yes, because it was, the women in the 50s and 60s were to be beautiful and shut up, they just had to be... And so she interviewed them, and most of the actors said, I like narrative, I like to tell stories, and the only way I like to make films, and the only way that I could is through acting, but, I would love to be a director. My mom told me one day, whispering, after, at the end of her career, she said, I could direct a film. But it was the most incredible thing, because it's so inconceivable that a woman will be able to do it. I think you should develop your own material. Or direct.
I would like to. I would like to direct. I think it's just about feeling that draw towards the specific story that I'd want to tell. And right now, I don't know what that would be.
Right, would be, yeah, but be open to it,
But what about you?
Oh, I directed films about animals, short films about animals. I'd made many series.
I'm sorry.
No, don't worry about it. Because I always felt I wasn't really working, so I'm a little bit surprised that Conclave gave me this reputation of being an actress in Hollywood, because I always felt I was a little bit at the periphery of it. Maybe because I had an accent, because I worked with David Lynch, Guy Madden, Bob Wilson, all the people that were known but really very avant-garde. So I'd never had any hesitation about making my films, which they're very short. They're 2 minutes each. I transform myself into an animal, and I tell a story about that animal, whether how they have sex, or how the strategy of seduction, or motherhood. New scientists, biologists are nowadays women, and they ask themselves, what is the maternal instinct? I mean, everybody thinks they know, but nobody has looked at it. Your mom, too, as a psychologist, probably felt like, you know, Freud said a lot of things, but a lot of other things haven't been looked at. And then the monologue I've written, most of them sometimes directed, but on stage you don't see yourself. So sometimes I need a director, not sometimes to tell me, to find out whatever I have inside me, that I know, but to tell me, he reads better if you go on that side of the stage, he goes better there. The last monologue that I did, Darwin Smile, I had a French director, Muriel Mayette, who was also an actress. And she was fabulous because she completely understood my intention, and she would say, it's more fun if you, at the end of the sentence, you just throw the things like that instead of putting it down. She never gave me the psychological motivation. It just knew exactly what I wanted to deliver, and sometimes there was a little gesture or something or a pause and that helped me deliver it better. Clarity of deliverance. But it's not that I didn't know what I wanted to say, but how do you make it clear for the audience? And she was very helpful that way.
Oh, that's wonderful.
No, sometimes, so it's hard sometimes to act and direct because we don't see ourselves.
Oh, of course. I mean, I've witnessed that. Really my first ever big job was on a show where our lead actor was directing, writing, producing, and starring in every single scene. And so to see that firsthand was incredible, one, to know that it's possible.
Yeah.
But I also saw how much work goes into that, because you're shooting a scene and then you're going behind the monitor, watching it, and then having to go back. And it's a lot.
Yeah, it slows down the process. And also, for example, in a scene where you broke down at the end of Anora, if you had to direct and you had to judge and come back, you know, sometimes you need concentration, like going into a tunnel with the acting, and then the director makes sure that, you know, the camera catches the eye, the light is hitting you, you're not in the dark,
so
you know.
So many moving parts.
Yeah, so many moving parts, yeah.
So I gather you're a big animal lover.
Yeah. I heard you have a doggie, a new one.
I do.
A Chihuahua, I read about that.
Yes, I have a little evil little Chihuahua who I just adore and is one of the best things in my life right now, or best beings in my life right now. But I'm a huge animal lover as well. And
you're with the horses, and you got a Chihuahua so he could travel with you.
Yes, well, I saw him at a rescue event, and there was no choice. I had to take him home because I just fell in love with him. The first 30 seconds I saw him, I decided I was going to take him.
Oh, really?
Oh, yes. I couldn't help myself. He was about this big, and...
How old? Was he an adult already, or puppies?
No, he was maybe 3 months old.
Ah, so teeny. Well, yeah, a Chihuahua 3 months old must be like a nut.
He fit in the palm of my hands like this. And I took him home, and I was planning on bringing him to travel lots of places, but he's quite naughty, and he doesn't like men. Oh. I don't know what happened exactly, but he does not allow any man to go near me.
He's a male?
Yes, well, he's a very...
That's it, you got the answer right there.
Yeah, So I think traveling has proven quite difficult with him. He's a character, and so we'll see if he ends up being more comfortable with that. But as of now, I think he likes to be home.
Yeah. Not confront the world and who's taking don't touch her,
like,
don't talk to her.
Nobody can look at
she's
me
mine,
or
she's
touch
mine.
me.
Because they're very protective. I mean, dogs are very protective.
Yes. Do you have dogs?
Yes. I have dogs. I have a little farm. I have chickens,
Yes,
ducks.
you have a farm. I read about that.
Sheep, goats, bees. Bees are not godly. But the rest are, yes. And I also volunteered for many years for the Guide Dog Foundation and raised and do initial training for guide dogs. Then eventually they go with the real trainers. But they have to have a preparation, and I do the preparation. And,
that's so interesting.
I always loved animal. I always, and since I was a little girl, I always said I would like to make films about animals, but I didn't know how to get to it until I was in my 60s. I've made films, just whatever, and then when the film stopped and I went and studied ethology, somehow I started writing these films and then started the farm. And that's really my calling, I think, more than acting or more than modeling. I mean, I love that.
Yeah.
Do you have a plan, or you want to wait, digest this success and evaluate what you want to do? How does it?
I have no plan. Maybe I should have a plan, but I think for me, when I feel that draw towards a specific script or story or character, I'll know that that's what I have to do next. There are some things that I really like, but I'm looking for that love and that passion. And I think working on Anora was such a wonderful experience. I want to feel that going forward. And I'm excited about the opportunity of getting back to that feeling. But I am really looking forward to getting back to being creative in that way because I miss it a lot.
Yeah.
And what about you?
Yes, me too. I feel that traveling and doing interviews and red carpet takes away from the creativity. I can hardly read a book, or I can write. I want to write a new series of my short films. I can't because first of all, the days are long when you promote a film or you're supporting an award season. But even if there were, sometimes you just go to one event and you say, well, in the morning I can write. I can't. So I have to go back into my privacy because what I like is the creative process more than the promotion. I find the promotion hard.
Well, I think it's, at least from my experience, I do recognize the immense, the privilege and how lucky I am to be in this position.
Yeah, okay, me too.
Of course. It's the emotional energy that you're giving, taking from people at an event. You're meeting so many people, having so many conversations. And then to be alone, I think to recharge, you need to just be inside of yourself.
Yes, exactly, because it's very private, the creative process. When I wrote, I worked with a wonderful man called Bob Gottlieb, that was the head of Knopf and editor-in-chief of The New Yorker. And I wrote a book, and he was my editor, incredibly. And he gave me a secret, and I'm going to give it to you. He said, if you want to write, take 3 hours of your days, always the same 3 hours, lock yourself in a room and write. Don't judge it, write. The next day you'd read it. And I did. So I will wake up very early in the morning because then the children will wake up and then I do breakfast or, Mama, just 1 second, I need to tell you something. Oh, no. And so I will wake up at 5 in the morning and 5 to 8 every day I wrote. And I'm still using that process of solitude. And some days you're despaired. You're just in that room. But you stay. And little by little by little, your voice, your creative voice comes out. And I need that solitude again.
I'm similar in a way. I need time to ground myself, get back to feeling like me.
Yeah.
And so I know I'm quite introverted, and I definitely love the times where I can be alone and get back to that. And I journal a lot too, and so that always is quite healing and relaxing for me. Yeah. and feels a little creative too.
Oh yes.
Even if it's
the
just
base
for
of-
me. Yeah.
Yeah, it is for you, but it's the base of it. You know, it comes from it comes from that. Well then, good luck.
Thank you, and to you as well. I'm such an admirer, and I loved your work in Conclave, and I'm excited to see your next film and the next one. And
I might play a bug or something. I may not play a human. Play an
well, I
animal.
would love that. I would love to see you play a bug. I'm looking forward to that. Maybe I'll do that too. I'll be a bug. I would like to play. If you were a bug, what bug would you be?
Well, I know that I already played several bugs.
Oh,
the worst was
okay.
a worm. Because a worm, I had a costume and I had to be in this costume like this. I couldn't even scratch my nose drink.
Okay.
It was a very simple costume, you know,
Yes.
but I didn't realize how difficult it was and to direct. And then I had to lie down and I had to tell everybody. It was the worm was the hardest.
Where can I find this?
Oh, you can find them on Criterion. Do you know the Criterion
Oh, of
channel?
course I do.
The Criterion
Yes.
channel,
Oh,
Isabella
wonderful.
Rossellini. You see all my films.
I'm very looking forward to seeing you as a worm. It's probably brilliant. I think if I were to be any bug, I would like to be a ladybug.
A ladybug is
Yeah.
cute, yeah. It's pretty. I don't know how they mate. That is the part interesting, because the bugs...
I'll find out and then I'll tell you.
Because bugs,
Well, on that note,
I know, it's so nice to talk to
it's
you.
been absolutely wonderful speaking with you, and I hope one day maybe we can I'll just take you for a coffee or something like that.
Yeah, me too, I would love that.
Okay.